So, welcome to ELT in Chile, a podcast about teaching English in Chile. In this space, Kevin and I, we talk to teacher trainers, and academics who like to share their experiences and expertise in various aspects of English language teaching in Chile, and not only in Chile, of course, but globally. So, in this episode, we will be talking to Pascual Pérez-Paredes, who will be talking about, well, his experience as a teacher and also professor and as a researcher. Where Pascual is a professor of linguistics and linguistics in Universidad de Murcia, and also former lecturer in research second language education at the University of Cambridge. His main research interests are the use of corpus linguistics methods in applied linguistics, corpora and digital resources in language education, and corpus-assisted discourse analysis. And he's also the co-editor-in-chief of Cambridge University Press Recall Journal. So, Pascual, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And also, I know it's summer, so very good.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, there are probably like two books that we would like maybe to talk about. Maybe the newest one that we can see in your background, Corpus Linguistics for Language Learning Research. So congratulations on that. If you have to talk about that book, let's say in general, maybe what would be the main message in your opinion, Pascual? Who could benefit most from it?
Well, this was a very difficult book to write. So this is part of an excellent collection on research methods. So this is the collection is Research Methods in Applied Linguistics, John Benjamin's. So you can find there all sorts of different methods, and so I think around 2019, so before COVID-19. We got this proposal to write exactly this title. Yeah. And gosh, it's been difficult. It is massive. So at the beginning, I think we thought we could come up with something that could, embrace the whole language learning research kind of area. But then as soon as we started writing this one, by the way, my co-authors are Jel Mark and Anne O'Keefe, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a three author effort. Yeah. So as soon as we started to think about the book and write the book, we realized how massive the area is. So eventually we decided to focus on what we call central corpus linguistics methods in applied linguistics. And who is this book for? This book is for a wide range of, I suppose, early career researchers and probably just midlife career researchers that are not very familiar with corpus linguistics, or even with corpus linguists that probably are not familiar with doing research in language learning or in language learning research area. So it's a little bit of everything in terms of scope. We aim for just MPhil, MA, or PhD students, and I suppose early career researchers in applied linguistics, in the broad, as Mike McCarthy says in the introduction to the book, in this broad church, which is corpus linguistics and learner language research. So I suppose that's the main audience for the book.
All right. Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. Well, I know that, Kevin, I, and yourself, we mainly do research on corpus linguistics. Sometimes when we go or when we have to teach at university, sometimes Kevin and I were teaching an introductory course called Introduction to Corpus Linguistics. And sometimes when we ask people, it's like, what do you think it is? And it's difficult for them, let's say, to understand, or maybe they see linguistics. Still, there are many people who are unfamiliar with this area. Pascual, how would you define, let's say, corpus linguistics, maybe in simple terms, or maybe try to help people who are not really familiar with the area?
Well, I suppose the best definition I can come up with is the study of the statistical properties of language as found in large collections of data. Large collections of data that happen to be put together following some criteria. Mm-hmm. So I suppose that is an easy, straightforward definition. I know there is a lot to unpack there.
Sure,
So
absolutely. I mean,
probably, I suppose the main idea is that we study language through the analysis of real uses of the language across different contexts. So
sure.
that is probably a very straightforward kind of definition.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you would like to find out some more information, you can read the book "Corpus Linguistic for Language Learning Research." Maybe there is when I was checking in there are some like some of the essential terms that you, let's say, need to know. Also, we saw another volume, and with Kevin, we were checking it, like an element published by Cambridge, where you work with Professor Alex Bolton, where you, let's say, well, I like the idea of those elements, like those brief books where you try to explain like things maybe in brief terms. Can you tell us a little bit about that specific volume, or like maybe what you were trying to do, or like with that specific text, Pascual?
Yeah, well, you know that this type of, and in particular Cambridge Elements, these are books that probably are around 70, 80 page
Yeah.
books that try to deal with a very specific area or object of analysis in general terms. So this is published in the language teaching elements. Okay, so that means that our primary target audience will be language teachers. And I remember this is a funny story. We got together, Alex and myself, and we said, "Look, it is interesting that we have the chance to write this book." And we thought, well, there is so much in data-driven learning already out there. Maybe we can talk about that, which I think is really, we are living these 2025, 2024, but especially 2025 is so exciting. We can witness this boom in terms of publications and encyclopedias and handbooks where DDL, data-driven learning, can be found. And we thought, well, maybe what is really different here is that the audience will be not primarily corpus linguists, people that are familiar with corpus linguistics. We have the chance really to speak to language teachers that are not necessarily familiar with corpus linguistics and data-driven learning. So we thought that having the opportunity to work with CUP, and especially in this language teaching element series, that gave us the opportunity to, in a way, break this class ceiling that I suppose we talked so often in corpus linguistics conference, where we kind of complain, that, well, would really like to be, just more relevant in other areas, I suppose, in TESOL or in the broader applied linguistics field. So for us, that was a very exciting opportunity. So that's why we decided eventually to try to think in terms of ways that we can speak to language teachers that are not necessarily familiar with data-driven learning, and at the same time using a very broad kind of approach that does not only look at corpora, but maybe other collections of language or language resources that can be used as if you could be querying a corpus. So yeah, I suppose that's the main idea behind that particular book.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Pascual. And let's say when you I mean, this is something that also, let's say, happens to us, like this crossover between technology and language teaching. Do you still find, let's say, some what are the main difficulties you find when you need to, for example, explain this or talk about this with teachers who don't really specialize in corpus linguistics or DDL or data-driven learning?
Yeah, that's well, but not only teachers. I think it's also language learners, even if they have somehow been exposed to training in corpus linguistics methods. I remember this paper we wrote, I don't know, it's 10 years ago, where we taught university students to use Corpora to query the BNC. So we had these workshops. So we taught, just regular expressions or wildcards to query. And then what we found, because we use computer logs, through the computer logs, we found that they were mainly querying the BNC as if the BNC interface was Google.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, there is evidence that that was the case as we used computer logs. So, we thought, so what is going on here? I mean, despite these training sessions and the way we kind of, sort of try to explain, the many virtues behind using Corpora and querying Corpora, using these, very sophisticated methods, students still relied on like kind of natural, straightforward approaches. Then this is just over 10 years ago. Yeah. Think about AI right now. You can use natural language. So that is the next big step in data-driven learning. I suppose it is. I think in a way we are just trying to talk about querying Corpora with a range of tools that, let's face it, are difficult for language learners. And there's many examples of this one. I was thinking of in my plenary last week in corpus linguistics, I talked about a new paper by Dominic Stewart, where he sort of tries to walk in the shoes of a hypothetical student that uses Sketch Engine for the first time. That is a great paper. Where he takes you by the hand and says, okay, forget just for a while that you are maybe a corpus linguist, and try to see Sketch Engine through the eyes of somebody who happens to be new to, corpus linguistics or this type of software. And I was also thinking about this fantastic interview that I did with Jael Mark, with Tony McInnery and Mike McCarthy in the Beyond Concordance Lines volume for John Benjamin's. That is a fantastic interview with these two giants of corpus linguistics. And Mike McCarthy at some point thinks about this difficult process that for us corpus linguists, it's just second nature. You check out the concordance lines and then you come up with a hypothesis. And maybe we tend to forget how difficult this may be, even, just from a cognitive perspective, for a student that really finds that this is a hard process. So this collecting all of these clues and nuances in concordance lines out of context is really hard for some of his students. So yeah, I think it's not only technology. I think it's technology is, I suppose, what many people describe as how symbolic meaning is attained in society. And for example, just 20 years ago it was Google, now it's AI. Yeah. So how do we people as a society try to find answers to our questions, right? So again, 20 years ago, the information was on the internet, and you were just invited to query, your search engine and trying to put together some of the evidence or findings there. And now it's AI that makes your life so much more, in a way it is easier, but at the same time it's kind of a challenge.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, maybe makes it not only easy, but sometimes for some other tasks, let's say more complicated. But I think I have a question for that. Maybe that's going to be later after some of Kevin's questions. Kevin, I don't know if you'd like to proceed.
Thank you. No, I think, Pascual, thank you very much for answering the previous question. And I think you've hinted at quite a few interesting things there when you said that students may find it really difficult to analyze a concordance line.
Yeah.
And I also think it has something to do with them being L2 learners. So the contextual cues, the nuances, the implied meanings, perhaps, for someone who speaks English proficiently or professionally proficient, that's okay because we're used to analyzing this type of language. But as a language learner who may have, just not a full grasp of the language, of the vocabulary, this could make this even more difficult. And along those lines, my question would be, when it comes to corpus-assisted discourse analysis in its broadest sense here, what are the hindrances and how can we overcome those barriers, shall we say, to use this effectively in the classroom? If you've got any suggestions there for us and for the audience.
Well, I think there is a mediation role that I think researchers, language teachers, software developers, and material writers, and in general anyone in the profession really can perform. So I'm thinking about teachers that may find in corpora just examples that can be curated and taken to the language classroom. So in a way, I think that is a very positive first step. So the language teacher can be using the corpora to sort of mine kind of real uses and probably gather more information about the contexts where those uses were found, and then take these selection or curation of concordance lines to the language classroom without some people use the expression friction, without the friction that you are exposed whenever you are querying, I don't know, Ankong or Sketch Engine or any other software. So that is one thing. Another thing, I suppose, is that probably, and this is already happening, that we can, but I don't want to push things now, is to try to use some of these affordances created by AI to facilitate use of natural language. So that is, I think that is one thing. But also, maybe your question is more about how do you form hypotheses, and I think really that is an educational kind of challenge or educational kind of aim that we as language teachers probably can also be interested, as probably we've been relying in the past so much on deductive kind of reasoning or deductive sort of rule-based language learning, instead of promoting a more kind of approach which also combines deductive reasoning with more inductive reasoning, where we facilitate or create the condition for what is called statistical language learning, which is just sort of creating the condition for language learners to appreciate frequencies. What is more frequent? What do people say if they are friends and they are speaking to each other, in terms of a contrast with how do people write a formal email to complain about price hike in I don't know, just electricity bills or whatever. So being in a position to really helping language learners to see these differences and promote just hypothesis formation and language learning through inductive processes, I think it's also part of the process. And to be honest, I think this is not a big kind of criticism. I think it's part of how technology works in language teaching and in language learning. We've been more interested in making technology available, which is great, both language teachers and language learners and researchers. And now I think it's the time, in the time of AI, to think about more about pedagogy and this type of creating conditions for a more critical approach to how we create the conditions for language learners to pick up and understand and learn languages. So I suppose it's a combination of a little bit of everything. Is language teachers understanding their emic context, is kind of, okay, this is going to be good for my language learners. This is the type of corpus that I think can be useful for my language learners. Or, as we, for example, in the book you mentioned earlier, in the Cambridge Element, data-driven learning, in and outside the language classroom, what we do is to kind of promote the use of pedagogic corpora. I mean, small corpora. I mean, not corpora in terms of corpora that are representative of the language, but corpora that can be representative of the type of language that language learners need in or across different contexts. So, yeah, I suppose it's a difficult question, but there are so many things that language teachers, researchers, and language learners can actually do. Yeah.
Now, this is absolutely true and fascinating, but no, there's no but. But I kind of there is. I was just thinking of your 2019 systematic review and also your very recent Core Encyclopedia chapter, where you talk about data-driven learning. And I think your main takeaway, and please correct me if that's wrong, but the main takeaway that I got from those two contributions is that most DDL is focused and almost embedded in tertiary education. But when we look at pre-tertiary education, pre-tertiary mainstream education, shall we say, secondary schools, primary schools even, DDL is rather scarce. That's an observation I've made as well. Yeah. So to maybe if I can ask self-critically of the field, what are we doing wrong? Or is it just that DDL may be better with adult students? I mean, this comes then with Peter Crossway's 2019 DDL for young learners. So there seems to be what is happening and what needs to be happening to make this to make DDL a bit more tangible in pre-tertiary education.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. Well, I think although there is very little research in secondary education when compared with university language education, what we know from secondary schools is that DDL works in secondary schools, as per this fantastic meta-analysis by Alex Bolton and Tom Cobb, 2017, I think. So we know that the research that is found in secondary schools, DDL seems to work pretty well there. Obviously, what happens is that there is an emphasis on language gains, and well, I think that is also one of the limitations in terms of the research, that the type of research design that we tend to find is either, just across group or within groups designs where, just testing gains, I think automatically, well, not automatically, but mainly lead to an increase in terms of knowledge. But that's a different story. Yeah. I think probably there has been for just I don't know, maybe over 20 years an interest in using general corpora in language education, and corpora that are not necessarily interesting or relevant to language learners across the board, right? So again, just talking about things you mentioned before, just how do you make sense of concordance lines? How do you make sense of concordance lines on the BNC if you are, I don't know, just 13 years old and your main input comes from Instagram? In terms of information, and so I think there is a huge crisis in terms of the both education system I mean, when I say crisis, I mean kind of evolution, which means that we are breaking away with things, the way things were done in the past. And again, I like to quote this fantastic book by this Italian linguist, Raffaele Simone. So he wrote this book in Italian. I think it's only found in Spanish and Italian, not in English. It's called something like Ways of Learning That We Are Losing. So, formas de aprender que estamos perdiendo. He wrote this book in the early 2000s. I think it's 2001, 2002. In Spain, it's published, and I think across South America, it's published in Taurus. It is an excellent book. And he talks about the difference between prepositional meaning and non-prepositional meaning. So he, back then, just 23 years ago, he wrote this thing and said, look, prepositional meaning, so the type of meaning which is based on reading long lines, long paragraphs across pages and pages, this is becoming less and less the way in which we access knowledge in modern societies. So this is the case now where, again, early 2000s, we are 2025. So now is the case that knowledge is fragmented. It's non-prepositional, is based on images, and I would say videos. And language, the way we process language in our brains is different from the way we process language just 25, 30, 40 years ago, where most of, what we knew back then was based on long periods of reading with almost no distraction and non-fragmented exposure to. So coming back to the question, just number one, resources probably are difficult for language learners, and even COCA or BNC or the BNC. I mean, they will present kind of challenges for very young language learners, I suppose. So this is why I think now we have the opportunity, not only with AI. Before AI, we had the opportunity to put together, as language teachers, small corpora of relevant language for our language learners. And in the book, Alex Bolton and myself, we talk about the many opportunities that we can now find in order to put together, with just some minimal understanding of how text processing works, of corpora that can be more relevant to our language learners. And maybe we can either facilitate the query process and take these concordance lines to the language learners, or we can teach language learners to sort of, just take the plunge and really do these themselves as part of a bigger picture where they do something which is more kind of, more detective-like. I'm talking about here's Bernardini's
Tim Johnson.
of language learner as a detective. All right. So I think this, and also thinking about last week in corpus linguistics, I had the chance to actually speak with this German language teacher that she is working on a super exciting project where he is gamifying data-driven learning through a language app. So I think that is brilliant. So she is using a small corpus, and she is kind of restricting the number of concordance lines that are presented to language learners because they have been curated before and they are presented in a more gamified context. So, and this is for primary education. So I think that is a brilliant idea. It doesn't mean that we should all gamify DDL
everything
or anything like that, but why not try this with a group of students or just again, take advantage of some of the resources that are available to language teachers, and take these to the language classroom, or even to just outside the language classroom, kind of exploiting DDL and corpora can be helpful for language learners.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's super interesting. Also, you're touching upon using or how DDL can be made accessible for students, right? For language learners. One thing that I'd also be quite interested in discussing with you is teacher training and teacher corpus literacy, shall we say. Going back to Lenko-Simanska 2017 and Chen et al. 2019, there have been, although rarely, but there have been studies that looked into teacher education and what teachers actually take away from teacher education programs. Now, Lenko-Simanska in Poland, I think, she did this for 1 semester, whilst Chen et al., they did this for 3 hours. So clearly there's some disparity here. But interestingly, both studies have come to the conclusion that teachers find it interesting, but they don't know how. They take a course, they take a module, they spend an extensive amount of time in university or some sort of professional training, and then they don't really know how to design a task. They don't really know how to manipulate a corpus, how to build a corpus, how to analyze it, and so on. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate, but what are we doing wrong? What can we do better? Or what are potentially things that we would need to give teachers so they can take advantage of corpus linguistics, of data-driven learning, and the tools and skills they need to operationalize this?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Okay, so first, probably most language teachers that are already taking advantage of DDL or corpora, probably we come from corpus linguistics kind of training. So for us, that will be kind of an extension of how we see our own research and the way we want to know more about language. So, but that also means that this is restricted to just a very tiny number of language teachers. So that's number one. Number two is, and this is something that is just behind the motivation to write the Cambridge element in the language teaching series, is we really need more conversations with language teachers that are not necessarily familiar with corpus linguistics, and I think this is our responsibility. If we just remain part of this close-knit group of corpus linguists, then we could have this conversation in this kind of echo chamber for ages. And
that's
we can
a good metaphor.
Corpus linguistics. Oh yeah, this is super interesting. But then this is of course part of the process, and maybe also look, it's corpus linguistics is I think is a new field of analysis, and data-driven learning is also a new field of analysis. So again, teaching the language corpora conferences, they've been going on for just 3 decades, which may seem a long time. But again, we are just, I suppose, in the early kind of stages. Hopefully, if AI is not sweeping away with everything, we can talk about that later. But so more conversations with language teachers that are not necessarily corpus linguists. This is also necessary. One interesting chapter, I think that I co-wrote with a language teacher and researcher at the Instituto Cervantes, Manchester, in this new volume edited by Henry Tyne and Stephanie Espina on corpus linguistics for language learners and Romance languages. This is a focus group we did in the UK with Spanish language teachers in the UK, and all of this is a group of, if I remember well, 6 or 7. So all of them were fascinated by the possibilities and their resources. Even for Spanish, for Spanish there is very, very little, when compared with English language in terms of resources. But still, There are some very interesting resources for the teaching and the learning of this Spanish language. But then all of them agreed that it would be kind of very challenging for them to use corpora throughout their curriculums. They really had very limited time for something that was not part of the curriculum. And for example, in terms of frequency, they said, look, in the UK system, frequency is very important. And we have frequency lists. But we already have the frequency lists. We don't really develop the frequency list out of the specific corpora that we are talking about here. So, I suppose we really need to go the extra mile here and try to be more vocal about these resources. Again, chambers that are not full of corpus linguists, and maybe go out there and have more conversations with language teachers in other conferences or meetings, I suppose.
I think there's something you said, something interesting that you said, corpus linguistics as a resource, or data-driven learning as a resource. I think also in the way it has been communicated, being self-critical here, corpus linguistics maybe has been, or the field have, or some in the field have tried to brand corpus linguistics as the answer to all the things that go wrong in English language teaching, to mainstream textbooks that don't really work, and so on. But I think it's also important to take a step back and recognize that DDL is a great resource, but it may be also a great resource amongst a host of great resources, and not the answer to everything. It's just like a thought I've been having since I first came across corpus linguistics, which was like, never want to touch it, and now I'm doing it and earning my everyday bread and water with it. So I don't know your thoughts about this, Pascual.
No, of course. It's I think corpora again, corpus linguistics as a research method, or as a methodology, and corpus methods as just a collection or a constellation of corpus methods within corpus linguistics as a methodology, probably will be our, just go-to place number one if you are into corpus linguistics. Probably this will be your research methodology of choice, or weapon of choice, dealing with just language research, or even language learning research. Having said that, of course, corpora are a fantastic resource, but it's just one of the many resources that the language teachers can probably have at their disposal. I mean, to be honest, I think that if you are a A1 or A2 language learner, probably you can benefit so much from the type of curated language that is presented to you, other methodologies or other approaches, and which can also speed up your language learning process, rather than start querying, just from minute one, my name is Pascual in a corpus. So I totally agree with you. It's is one resource. It's a very powerful resource, but it's one of the many resources that language teachers and language learners can have at their disposal, I suppose.
Well, thank you very much for your answer, Pascual. I think Jose has got a question as well.
Well, yes, Pascual. I mean, you touched upon this at the beginning. It's like, AI is everywhere now, and you said like it's sweeping away everything. I think here we can see this from two perspectives. This is something that I usually hear from colleagues, or I've seen, let's say, on different papers. There are many affordances, also lots of threats, or sometimes people say opportunities. Like threats by artificial intelligence production by LLMs, especially when this is compared, like you said, natural language or maybe authentic language production. What do you think of this? Do you see maybe more affordances, more opportunities, maybe threats, or maybe what would be your perspective on this, Pascual?
Well, maybe it's a bit too early to really understand what is what is happening in the language learning kind of field.
Yeah.
Although guys, that 2024 and the 2025 is crazy in terms of the amount of research that you see published in terms of using AI in language education. So that's one thing. I think we are kind of beginning to understand some of the implications. Also, my own take on this one is of course coming from corpus linguistics. Is number one, we can take advantage of AI to expand data-driven learning.
Yeah.
And an excellent example is the new English corpora.org website that probably already or very soon will display new features to take advantage of AI. For example, to bring together just the different collocates in terms of categories. So whenever you search, for example, for a collocation, you can, if this is what you want to do, you can click. If I remember well, this is the top right corner of the screen, and you can categorize those collocations into different topics. So I think that is a very interesting way to make use of AI in language education. So you are still, in a way, searching for language that is meaningful for you, whatever your reasons, right? You get the results, and if this is what you want to do, you can use some AI to facilitate or speed up your understanding of the complexity behind the probably hundreds or thousands of concordance lines that you are presented with. So I think in very simple terms, right? Of course, there is more to this, and I invite everybody to check out Mark Davies' fantastic website, where he is very open about his own process to understand how to use AI in his website. So that's one thing. Another thing is probably just using AI as your source of kind of language learning or language learning information, and which I really find is problematic on so many different levels and in so many different ways. We have just published this paper where our students look at the uses of a sketch engine for vocabulary learning and AI for grammar learning. And well, I don't even know where to begin here. Just in very simple terms, the level of unsophisticated engagement with the language which is presented through AI is alarming in a way. So I think we are primarily language educators. I think we have a huge responsibility here. We need to go out there and be very vocal about, not I suppose, telling people not to use AI, but try to make them use AI in critical ways that will further facilitate language learning. This is a massive area. I'm sure that you have your own take here, but I think we corpus linguists and data-driven learning and corpus linguistics here has a massive opportunity to contribute to what we have described somewhere as critical AI literacies. One of the components is main findings from corpus linguistics in terms of what it means to talk about frequency, what it means to understand how language behaves in a particular context through a particular race or genre. And in other words, just how we use language across different contexts, which is kind of nowhere to be found in most AI tools that we have tested. So this is kind of a black box there. If you ask any AI, I'm not going to mention any of those. You ask any of those, probably they will be very opaque about where their information comes from, and they will invite you maybe to go out there and check out the BNC or the COCA corpus. But the information that they present in terms of frequency and the contexts of use is rather limiting. Of course, this may change at any point in time, but I think it's such a good idea that we can probably just make use of our own corpora to actually use AI and read those frequencies from texts that we know will be relevant for the language learners. So just to cut a long story short, 2 areas of application. One is AI to, in a way, expand data-driven learning through the use of natural language interface in a way, so that make life easier for language learners. And number 2, just to try to learn what we have learned in terms of corpus literacy, to inform critical AI literacy and try to help language learners to understand basic concepts such as race or frequency and the implications of those concepts for language learners.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much. And I think, we can have another interview again. I think we had the same conversation with Peter Croswaite, or maybe we said, let's see what happens in a year. Because,
exactly.
last year it was, things are going very fast when it comes to, I don't know, sometimes we see platforms, websites, or the promise of, everything's going to be fixed by AI. And we think that's not the the answer, but we'll see, because this is advancing. Like, we can see AI everywhere now. So this is how this is going to affect, not only the future of DDL, but how we also teach and also how people learn languages, not only English, but let's say any language. So I don't know, Kevin, if you have any. Yes.
And 1 year in AI is probably going to change so many.
Yeah, it's fast, isn't it?
Very, interfaces and so. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a fascinating time to be around, to be honest. But I do really believe that we have, as educators, we have a massive responsibility to stand up and just show the way into ethical uses of AI. And since we are familiar with what we've learned throughout just a few years of opera, we can take advantage of that understanding of how language works to actually inform language teaching or language learning through mainly, this is my point, through critical AI literacy by corpus literacy. Yeah.
That's a very good point. Learning from past mistakes, if they are mistakes. Right, Pascual, thank you very much. I don't have any more questions for now. I'm pretty sure there'll be plenty of more questions in future.
Yeah.
But no, thank you very much for this conversation.
Well, no, guys, thank you for having me. And just again, it is a fascinating time to do corpus linguistics and to
100%.
do language learning and to have conversations around how we can all really learn from each other and contribute to the conversation, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pascual, of course, if there is anything you would like to share, maybe a paper, book, so if you have any recommendations, you can share it with us, and we'll share that in, let's say, on our website, www.eltinchile.com. So, Pascual, again, thank you very much for your time, and you can enjoy your summer now. We're still enjoying our winter. I mean, actually, winter hasn't even started, so summer neither. But yeah, you can still, well, it's cold. I know that Kevin's complaining, but yeah, thank you very much, Pascual, for your time, and we'll be in touch in the future. So maybe to see what has happened again in another year.
Let's see. Yeah,
Right.
let's see.
Thank you, Pascual. Thank you, Kevin.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.